Yeah, so just to go over a wee bit of the Zoom etiquette that we've put in place for these meetings, if you were with us last time, you'll be aware, but just in case you weren't, we've muted everyone, as I said, just to keep noise to a minimum. Feel free to have your cameras on. We can see your, expressions, disgust, whatever it might be. And then we also have the chat function in the bottom of Zoom. So if you have anything to contribute to the chat, please feel free to write it in there. We also have developed, thanks to Tamara from Take One Action, who suggested some shorthand. So if you agree with a point, you can put a little plus, and if you don't agree with a point, you can put a little negative, but hopefully we won't see too many negatives in the chat today. So this is our second meeting in the session, or in our ongoing session of Scalarama online Zooms. It's really nice that we're joined by so many people from all across Europe today, actually. People in Wales, Berlin, so international. And that's a really nice thing that we've been able to take away from these meetings. Even though we can't be with you in person, we can be joined by such, exciting new people. Everything has changed so quickly since we had our session last month already. Festivals have taken up the mantle of delivering things online. People are looking towards social media. People are looking towards alternative ways of exhibition, off and online. And the growing nebulous of industry webinars continues to multiply. So welcome to ours. We're hoping that this can be helpful today. So today we'll be joined by Greg Walker from Pilot Light TV Festival, and he'll be discussing the fundamentals of securing licenses for TV content, and we'll be entering into a discussion as well about film licenses and covering the basics of that. We'll also hear from exhibitors who are already delivering online content. We're thrilled to welcome Anna Kublik, who will be discussing Windowflix, a Berlin-based film screening project. But first, I wanted to pass on some information about drive-in cinemas, which a few of you raised as something that you would like to investigate in the last session. So we've had correspondence with Lisa Brooks, who is the coordinator of Live Cinema UK. They've been putting out or been looking for expressions of interest in drive-in cinemas across the UK as they work with a number of contractors and suppliers who are able to make that stuff happen. So I'll just run through a wee bit about drive-ins for you to update you from stuff last session. Sean will then update you a wee bit more generally about what's happening in the industry in the UK in terms of what we're coming up against, I guess. And then we'll hear from Anna, and we will also be hearing from Backseat Bingo, Femspectives, and Snowcat Cinema, and Rianne Pictures, who is working with Screen Queens on some online content. And then we'll move into licenses and then any other business where it can be a rabble and you can ask questions and all that good stuff. So, in terms of drive-ins, Lisa has passed on some information. I'll also share with you guys Lisa's email. She's still accepting expressions of interest if anyone is looking to do drive-ins. The headlines really are that the biggest considerations are location and cost in terms of having access to somewhere that makes sense doing a drive-in, that cars can get to, that's concrete, that has power supplies, and also either pre-existing access to toilets or space for portaloos to come in. The cost is probably going to be the biggest barrier. If you're not a major organisation, they're looking at the region of £3,000 per day in terms of equipment hire, staffing, and covering some basic tech for that. And of course, that's before you've even got to the additional costs of your film license hire, any of your toilet hire, which could be up to £1,000 for 5 cubicles. And temporary events notices that you'd need to obtain off of the local council. Lisa has pointed us towards temporary events notice that you would need to obtain for the council. I think that that's slightly different in Scotland, and also varies vastly between councils. But Glasgow City Council do have an events department that you can contact to find out whether that's something that you're doable, or your local council, depending on where you are in Scotland. The biggest thing that would prohibit, I think, any exhibitor from doing drive-ins at the moment is the lockdown. We're all under lockdown. We shouldn't be leaving our houses to do a drive-in. But as we see the lockdown measures maybe being walked back a bit or relaxed, there can be things done to make sure that that's something that could go ahead. So, and the biggest thing that Lisa flags up to that is staff to sanitise bathrooms. It's a legal requirement to have bathrooms and porta potties and things like that at temporary events, so it's not something that we can get around currently. So you would just need to consider how you would make that sanitised if that would come to it. But we can pass on Lisa's information, and anyone that is interested in doing drive-ins can have a conversation with her that's maybe a wee bit more in-depth. So that's it for drive-ins and the information that we've mined after last session's questions. I'm now going to pass over to Sean, who can give you a wee bit of an update a la Scala and Matchbox.
Well, just very, very quickly, obviously there's no real updates for the Scalarama season in September, but some of the things we discussed last time, the Glasgow Short Film Festival, their project Orsana, who's the co-director of GSFF, has a project to unite the film exhibitors on a platform where we do kind of a season of screenings all together. So that's still under research, and into the proposed platform itself and the funding. Once it's come together, there's going to be a call out for anyone waiting to contribute. So the other stuff, BFI's Japan season has been basically relaunched, or will be relaunched for October and December. There's going to be no more expressions of interest for the higher tier funding, and they don't know yet if and when they'll open up the fund to the smaller tier funding. So that's just like a watch this space thing. Similarly, the BFI Film Field season, which was going to be called, or a themed journey, is moving out of the autumn spot to a yet to be confirmed season or time, and they're also reviewing the actual theme of it as well, so no further updates on that. And I know a lot of people, including us, spend a lot of our time working at the CCA for different events. They're going to have their office week. They're currently furloughed. Their office week is the 4th of May starting, so they'll be able to answer questions in emails that week. For us, for Matchbox, that means we'll have a clearer idea of a lot of our programming for the whole year, including Kianicon and Weird Weekend and all the other stuff we had planned. And Scalarama events, because again, a lot of people put on Scalarama events in the CCA in September. So we'll see. We might have a clearer idea, but then of course they might not have a clearer idea either. So anecdotally though, we've heard that other cinemas, for business projection purposes, only they don't have any secret information, are projecting an October reopening date. Again, that's based on, I think they have to plan financially and business wise. They don't have any secret information, but we have heard that that's their kind of projected schedule. So I guess we'll wait and see about that. In terms of these roundtables, the next one is going to focus on online screening models. We'll loads more information on that coming up, and that's kind of coming in clearer into focus, like how we're going to screen films online that aren't watch-alongs. We're going to have a bunch of guests that can speak to hosting your own programming online, whether it's rental, live streaming, and also just generally licensing and distribution. So that should be a lot more practical, and that'll be next month. Before then, legendary Canadian programmer Kayla Janice is going to be joining us for an in-conversation on Sunday, May the 10th. If you're not aware of who Kayla is, like, we'll share some information on that, but she's basically a programmer par excellence. Like, she's done loads of stuff, worked in loads of different contexts. She's a published author of several books. She's also runs her own publishing arm, and generally has a lot of experience, particularly having got her start in DIY exhibition. So this can be a really interesting conversation and very relevant to Scalarama. And that's about it for general updates. If we want to move on to
the only thing I would add to that is that if you're not zoomed out and you are interested, Ben Roberts of BFI will be speaking with Screen International on Tuesday. I think it's at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. UK time. And hopefully Ben will be able to expand a wee bit more on some of the information that's coming towards us out of the BFI and maybe make some of that clear, and that might be helpful if you're looking for any guidance or anything towards the BFI for funding in future, or anything that's been stalled a la Japan season or film feels. So that's plenty from us just now. I would like to welcome Anna Kublik, who's a creative who works across, whose work is informed by science, music and architecture. She is currently involved with the Berlin-based Windowflex project. So yeah, just welcome Anna to give us a wee bit of information about that project and just an insight into how you can continue to screen films during a pandemic, I guess.
Okay, I was thinking about how to introduce the project best way, and I think I'll just say how it came about, because then it's maybe more of a story, just explaining how all the thoughts and considerations are also barriers that we came across and that we kind of problem solved along the way in order to explain how it all happened. So I'm actually not from the film industry at all. So I'm a trained architect and artist mainly. I work in the performing arts and do a lot of installations. So my work is not based on cinematic projects at all, but I do work a lot on interdisciplinary projects. And in this case, I came across a company, or we're just about to actually fund this company. It's not even yet the license there that exists, but the foundation is an architect. His name is Olaf Karkov, and he got together me and a biologist and a guy who's absolutely a genius with lights and light technology. And when we started, there was no pandemic, and they just showed me around what they've been starting to develop. And amongst that was a very high, sort of very powerful projector. And so just before we sort of continued collaborating, the pandemic came along, and we did a Zoom meeting and wondered like what we could do, because the basis of this team, or the congregation of this team, is actually that we're trying to develop social projects, or projects with social impacts in an interdisciplinary kind of setup. And so along this way, I'm going to sort of sidestep and tell a bit about what in Germany is a big phenomena, and what sort of triggered the idea. Because during this pandemic, a lot of people started streaming. The theaters are streaming, the musicians are streaming. In Berlin, I'm based here in Berlin, by the way, who hasn't noticed yet. And we have a lot of people streaming, and there's this sense of connecting at the same time to look at something. In Germany, that has a long history, because in Germany, we have a Sunday evening crime scene investigation series that has been running since the 60s, and it's a massive success. Like 1.5 million to 2 million people watch this every Sunday, and there's actually bars and places, public venues like pubs, where they screen it so that you can watch it together. It's from public radio, from public national TV. So it's something that is accessible to everyone. And this kind of idea that people still actually want to have something communal, that they have a feeling that there's something communal like you have when you go to the cinema, is something that I felt, or that we felt, was missing in this whole streaming. I'm an artist who still believes that there's something about physicality, and that you can't solve everything digitally, and that you do have to have some kind of spatial experience. And because we're also an architectural team, it sort of made sense to think about that in that sense as well. And Olaf knows Berlin, of course, very well, because he's an architect here. And that then this idea came about, that what if we can collectively watch something but share the same space as well. This is something that Germans also really like. They have a long tradition from that. So in Berlin, the architectural urban space, Megan, you had a very nice expression of how you put it together, what we're doing. It's actually much nicer than what I could do. So the architecture or urban space here in Berlin offers a lot of white walls, and there's a lot of courtyards as well. And we were looking first for very dense housing units where they would been facing like a blank wall. But actually, our technicians, they're really so talented. They have this. They've developed a projector that is so strong that it could even project onto a colored background. And so then we started thinking about the content. What could we screen? You know, what could be accessible to everyone? And the first thought was, of course, Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton, because that way we wouldn't have the issue of sound, which would, you know, be the next question to answer. But then we came across the fact that, of course, these films are licensed, and it's very hard to get the license. And already we wanted to donate this to the greater good. It was not a project where we were interested in making any profit, but it was just about sharing something so that people would have an incentive to stay home. And the idea that you don't actually have to even leave in your own apartment to have a communal sense and a communal experience. So when we came across this problem with the licensing and the question what movies to screen, at the same time we also saw that the Berlin cinemas were looking for funding, because obviously they are all closed and they have no chance to do any screening or show any movies. And that's, I mean, worldwide the problem, presumably. And so we got in touch with them, and we got in touch with the public radio as well. And they're also affiliated with the newspaper here. So we have the Tagesspiegel, we have the Radio 1, which is like BBC 3 maybe comparison sort of. So it's a lot of music, or maybe alternative music, but it also presents a lot of alternative music concerts. And so they said, we're going to support this project, and we can support you by doing a jingle and promoting the project so people can apply with their courtyard, or if they have a good wall they're facing, then they can send a photo and send it to us, and we can you know, choose a venue for the next venue. So then the cinemas came in touch with us, and we said, we're not interested in making any profit. What we like to do is support the cinema in order to get some funding for them together for the fact that they're closed. Now, this is a cross-fertilization that happened, because through the cinemas we got licenses for movies. So it was actually perfect in the sense of that it came together. And we got some really, at the moment we have only a selection of 5 movies, but we are hoping that more will come, because yeah, a lot of it's found an immense resonance. Here we found some really amazing venues, just given urban spaces. We had like a terraced house that each terrace had a balcony. So every apartment had a balcony, and it was facing a huge white wall. And even like very far away, the 50 meters away, there was a dense housing block, and even they could see the movie from really quite a far distance. And we've been screening at the beginning for the launch of this project. We screened, I don't know the English word, it's Himmel über Berlin from Wim Wenders. I think something like The Sky Above Berlin. It's Wim Wenders' most famous movie. And so the idea then was to also contact Wim Wenders and get him to maybe make some kind of response to this project. And this, I think, really was then the key that made it very public, because Wim Wenders agreed to, he made a short movie greeting everyone and, you know, just asking for support for the Berlin cinemas. And this is what we screen before we show the movie, amongst others with all the radio station and the newspaper that is supporting us, as well as like we're also still looking and hoping for more sponsors. We found also a popcorn manufacturer who does really very high-end popcorn with very special fancy flavors, and they're distributing popcorns to all the apartments with masks and gloves and no contact. They made like a little tray to sort of offer to the people to really not be physically in touch with them. And so this is just really also our sort of, so there was a whole infrastructure that came together and fell into place. And now we've been having a lot of press from a lot of different sources. And this has been great, because we hope that this will just push the project and also push the funding that is being sought for from the Berlin cinemas, which is 700,000 euros. And we hope over the summer that we're planning to screen every Thursday and Saturday, and now obviously it's becoming later and later. A technical issue as well is with sound. We first we decided to use full-on sound. We just did full blast sound in the courtyard, and nobody seemed disturbed by it. So we showed, the second film was Loving Vincent, which looked obviously on a wall perfect, because it was like moving graffiti, and it had a great effect. And we just sent the sound out into the courtyard, and everyone was watching. A lot of children said, "Are you going to come again?" and I was like, "Ooh, I hope so, but I can't make any promises," because we do now have a lot of responses, a lot of applications. And we're just going to try to make as many people happy with the project as possible. Listening to you talking about the drive-in cinemas, it just pushes away a lot of other questions in terms of what you were talking about in terms of infrastructure. So we have a lot of costs that we save because we don't have to have public toilets. We don't have to have a certain infrastructure. What we do need to have is an apartment that allows us access to the wall facing perfectly perpendicular to the wall that we're projecting on. This is a necessary requirement that might be a little bit limiting, but then yeah, no situation is always perfect, but I think there's a lot of spaces we still have in Berlin to do this. And in terms of legally, with the sound, we haven't had any issues yet. I mean, it's been very supportive. Everyone has been very supportive and excited. Nobody's felt disturbed by the sound, but I think it's because we chose Thursday and Saturday night, and people are, they're longing to do something communal, and you could just tell that people were really just happy, even if the movie itself didn't seem so much of importance as just the moving image and the sense of having a communal experience that made it more this feeling, I'm not alone in this whole, because it is isolation that we're all going through right now, and that sense, you can just open your window, and luckily now it's getting warmer as well here, that you have more of a sense that you're not just streaming online and you're just watching something for yourself. Another idea, I mean, the name itself from the project Windowflix comes of course from some other well-known platform as a contra sort of point. But we also found out that that this other platform has an add-on app to watch together at the same time. So you can make appointments to watch something at the same time. And that was actually also something that triggered the project, just to think about this, the same time to watch something at the same moment and share something at the same moment. And yeah, so I don't know what else to talk about. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. yeah.
Thanks so much, Anna. Yeah, if anyone has any questions about the project, please put them in the chat. That was really insightful, Anna. Thanks so much for speaking. I think it's really nice to hear that there's projects that are happening, like you say, offline, that there are still things that we can do, and maybe looking forward to the future when venues and things are maybe limited in capacity, that's something that we can look forward to. Cinemore 77, Gary, so Gary that is with us, who does a lot of outdoor projections, I guess. He also has a yurt that they screen into. That's what Cinemore 77 are known for. But he just asked, what projector do you use?
Oh, well, that's a technical question that I'm afraid I can't answer. I'm just one of an interdisciplinary team. Now, all I know about the projector is that it was a quite cheap projector, and that they somehow tweaked it and uptuned it. These boys that are working in the team, they are some very smart boys. And they really know their technology about light, and they somehow figured a way out to make it extremely powerful. So even if I could tell you the make, I think it wouldn't help, because they somehow manipulated it. So I'm afraid I can't help you. This is also something that the company that we've sort of are still in the process of creating. We should be called Metachrome any month now. But for now we're called Meta Gray, and they're developing this project as well with the projector.
Perfect. And we'll definitely keep up with what you guys are up to. I think it's a great model, and I think that there's something really special about continuing that communal atmosphere throughout. And I think we'll also be joined by Marcel from York, who's been working on the project with you guys this month. And he'll be talking a wee bit more about it from the cinema point of view, and what it's like when all of a sudden you don't have a venue and you still need to find these audiences. So much, Anna.
I have something that I'd like to sort of, not as a necessarily how do you say expert, but something I heard about here in Berlin that might be interesting for your community. So in Berlin, there's a lot of independent movie theaters. There's some theaters that are as small as a living room. I don't know if any of you have been to a very small independent cinema here in Berlin, but they can be really tiny. And there's always been the problem with Cinemax and these bigger venues, like you have Odeon, or I don't know what you have at the moment there, but you know, the ones that buy the big movies, the big blockbusters, that always make up more the percentage of you know, for more to buy more, you know, the licenses for all these movies that come out. And what I heard of, and this is something I can't confirm, but what I heard of is that that the cinemas, the independent cinemas, and I think York is part of them as well, but you might want to ask that Marcel next week, is that they got together to make a how do you call it, like a company, but just like as in terms of not for profit, but just for a sharehold, like they're all part of like a sharehold. And what that effect was that they have more percentage than the Cineplex movies have in Berlin by now, meaning that they have the power to decide what movies they can buy, because they put themselves together as one unit. And this, I think, is a very interesting concept to make independent movies much stronger, or independent theaters much stronger, versus the big guys and the ones that buy the big movies and decide what the majority has to watch. And I think that makes also the speciality of this individual potential, because they have now more buying power than the big cinemas. And I just wanted to sort of say, if you don't have that in England, then maybe that's also something, or sorry, Great Britain. I know you're in Scotland and there's someone from Wales. I don't want to, in German you say England for the whole of Great Britain, so excuse me. So yeah, I thought maybe that would be of interest for you as Great Britain cinema, independent cinemas. If you're already sort of finding your way through the internet and through Zoom to find a collectiveness and sharing information, it might be interesting for you to think also about making some kind of legal form of community, so that you have more power as such. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like Scalarama, I think that's the germ of Scalarama, is bringing I guess our independent exhibitors community is probably a tier below cinemas, where like people that are a bit scrappy maybe exist outside of venues, bringing things to life in spaces that wouldn't normally be for films, just like window flicks with courtyards. But I think that's a really great point about that collectiveness. And I think we'll touch on it later in the session in terms of license negotiation and how, like you say, you know, it's better to be together instead of like these
independent fighters. Yeah.
So much, Hannah. Feel free to stick about if you're interested in hearing about licenses or what our other exhibitors are up to. So to mirror what we did last session in terms of hearing from our local exhibitors, we've opened that up a wee bit, but we're going to be hearing from Femspectives and Backseat Bingo, who are Glasgow-based exhibitors, and we'll also be hearing from Rianne Pictures, who are coordinating a lot of the online activity for Screen Queens, and Write Her Director as well coming up, as well as Wales-based Snowcat Cinema. So if I could invite, I think we've got Lauren Clark from Femspectives to speak about Femspectives at Home, if Lauren's about.
Yes. Sorry, I'm using my iPad because my computer conked out yesterday, so I'm like just figuring out how to maneuver Zoom on the iPad. It's a little bit funny, but anyways, yes. So sorry. I'm Lauren, and I co-run Femspectives with my partner Kathy Kemleitner. And just a little bit of background for maybe some who haven't, who we don't know. We are a film festival and film series based in Glasgow, all about sort of showcasing and like celebrating the work of women filmmakers. And we started in 2018, and we've been running since then. We've had 2 festivals, and we do a lot of pop-up events throughout the year, working a lot with different community groups and things like that. So for when the sort of pandemic hit, Kathy and I spent a lot of time sort of chatting about, you know, how we wanted to stay connected to people that were following Femspectives, and also a way for us to feel connected, because we were both sort of, you know, struggling. And so selfishly, we wanted to also create a project to bring people together in different ways and share movies, but keep it quite informal and quite relaxed, and kind of in our sort of usual thing, very non-hierarchical in terms of like we weren't putting together necessarily a curated program. We decided to take a little bit more of a relaxed approach. So we came up with Femspectives at Home, which is I think we originally called it Feminist in Quarantine or something. And so we came up with this idea that we would do a sort of communal tweet along using the Femspectives at Home hashtag, which happens every Wednesday. And then we would have a Zoom post-screening discussion, which would happen every Thursday. And sort of we've been maintaining that weekly. So we've been running for 6 weeks. And on Friday, we announced 2 new films on our website, as well as on sort of on Facebook, and get people to vote on which film that they would like to communally watch. So just to keep it quite relaxed and get everybody sort of intake, we're also always asking for more suggestions, just to try and bring more people into the fold. It wasn't supposed to, as I said, it's not. It's more relaxed kind of feel. And on Monday we announced the winning film kind of thing, and then we sort of we've been repeating that cycle for we're in our 6th week now, and it's been really, really nice. Like we've come into a couple of issues which I will speak about, but it's been really nice in terms of sort of developing more virtual and digital activity. And the feedback that we've gotten from people so far is they're really enjoying sort of the space of coming together and discussing the films, and something that we're probably going to continue, not on like post-pandemic, but probably not in the same sort of like weekly fashion, but because we've been able to reach people all over. Like we've and it's interesting too, seeing how you widen your audience in that way. And because everybody's still at home, like we have people in the States that have been tuning in quite a lot. We have folks all over the UK and Europe kind of getting involved. So we really kind of widened the reach. which has been really nice. And I also think like our discussions as well have been probably capped around 15 people at the moment, which has actually been quite a nice number because it's enough people to sort of contribute, but you don't feel overwhelmed when you're having sort of an online post-screening discussion, which I'm sure, as some of us can vouch, can be a bit more challenging to moderate a Zoom call than when you're just sort of having a circle conversation, which is how we do a lot of our post-screening discussions to try and encourage more people to get involved and make it more non-hierarchical. Some of the things that we've tried to do, we in our 4th or 5th week, I think it was, we got a little bit of support from Film Hub Scotland, which was really has been really helpful, because we opened up a Netflix account, because one of the things that we've done is all of our work is obviously made by women, but that we're screening, but we also, not having any money for the project at the beginning, we decided to open a Netflix account. And so folks that, for example, didn't have access to Netflix could get in touch, and we were sharing login codes and things like that to try and get more people involved, and to ensure the same sort of access provisions across the whole, all of the screenings, which has been really, really good. And I've had quite a number of people get in touch, which has been nice to see that it's being used, because I think sometimes there's always a frustration when you put in different access provisions and things, and then when it's not being updated, especially when it's really hard to reach people that don't have access for internet, for example. Like, people are being completely siphoned off from this virtual activity that's been sort of happening at the moment. So that has been really nice. One of the biggest challenges that we had in our, I guess it was our 2nd week, we were crashed one of our Zoom calls, which it was really interesting, because I hadn't heard about it, but then the very next day I saw all the articles and all the kind of how-to things to try and avoid these things from happening, which was really kind of was quite traumatizing, because when it first happened, but we very quickly kind of dealt with it in terms of providing new links and stuff. So we tried to put more safeguarding elements in place. So instead of sharing the code on our Facebook page or on our Twitter or in any sort of really public forum, we created a Facebook community. So you have to request to join that Facebook community in order to participate, and that's where 5 minutes or 10 minutes before the call, we'll post the Zoom details to get involved, just to try and help, just to try and mitigate any of those types of issues, because it can happen. And it was definitely something quite deliberate, and was something like 150 people that signed on to the Zoom call. So it was a lot. So it was very organized kind of thing. So we wanted to try and put some measures in place to avoid that. And we also, for people that maybe aren't on Facebook, we have a couple of people that we send weekly emails to with the Zoom details just to ensure that it's not, for people that don't have Facebook, that they can still sort of participate. But as a whole, I think it's been a lot of, it's one of those things, because sometimes I feel these days have been quite exhausting with all the Zoom calls and all this sort of virtual activity, and feeling that you need to participate. And obviously there's been a kind of surge in online activity, and it can be just quite exhausting. And so, because our calls are, for example, like the Zoom discussion, we scheduled it for 8:05 on a Thursday. We scheduled it for 8 o'clock before they started doing the NHS sort of claps. And then we're like, let's just push that back a little bit. But we're always so exhausted by that point, but then actually feel really rejuvenated after kind of having that communal experience. Because one of the things I've personally really been missing is I go to the cinema a lot by myself, but it's still very nice, that kind of conversations that you have afterwards with your pals and stuff. And so it's just been a really nice informal way, without putting too much pressure on ourselves, because we're both both Kathy and I have other jobs and stuff that we try we have to kind of work on, and we didn't want to make too much more work for ourselves, but a way of still kind of continuing the work and trying to develop it. And I think I can see it as well, not only growing into sort of a monthly thing, but also expanding beyond Netflix. It just seems like at the beginning it made the most sense to do something like that, just to keep a kind of consistency measure. But I think moving forward we'll try and expand that further. But it's been really nice. We've had a lot of a lot of good feedback. I think another thing that's kind of hard in terms of the funding aspect that I just quickly mention, sorry, I've been blathering on, is that it's a bit harder to capture numbers in terms of reporting back to funding, our funders and stuff. So with Film Hub Scotland, I don't know if anyone has applied for any sort of little pots of funding, but they have an online survey that they're using. And one of the things we ran into is that somebody who is attending one event, if they then attend another, they can't refill in the form, sort of thing. There's which is so I emailed Georgia about this from Film Hub Scotland. So I think hopefully they will adapt that, so we'll be able to figure out a way to capture numbers. And also I've been keeping sort of a rough idea of how many people, because it's hard to get, you have people that are asking you for the login details or participating in the discussions that maybe aren't part of the tweet along. So it's hard to there's definitely people that you're missing in terms of a general number of who you think's participating in terms of feedback to funders. But as a whole, it's been it's been a fun experience and an interesting sort of learning curve in terms of trying to bring people together in a virtual way, and obviously not being able to reach everyone that we normally would like to. But hopefully, as this continues, we'll be able to find different ways to try and widen the audience as well, and ensure that more people are being able to participate. But yeah, I'm happy to chat if anyone has any thoughts on that or feedback on if anyone's been doing other virtual activity. I'd love to kind of hear.
Perfect, Lauren, thanks so much. And just to, I guess, throw praise at Femspectives, you guys are one of the first to really take up this mantle of online film screenings and creating that community. And a lot of people have been requesting that Femspectives have a chat in Scalarama, so it's really nice to hear. It's nice to hear as well that you guys are getting things out of it as well, in terms of feeling rejuvenated and feeling that's really nice, because I think as exhibitors, when we're putting on screenings and there's that really nice relationship that we have with our audiences and people that come along, that's something that I'm missing, so it's really nice.
Definitely. Yeah, because I think what I was sort of saying there, I guess, is just that it really, I think sometimes you do, like you were saying, you do it more for the audience kind of thing. But in this moment where we're all kind of in crisis, it's that I'm also doing it for myself, because I miss people, you miss having that engagement and being able to share and talk about films and, and yeah. So, and for example, my partner is not that into film the way I am. So I'm also not getting that same kind of, chat that's really, really fruitful.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for giving us that wee insight into Femspectives. I'm now going to throw to Caris of Rianne Pictures, just to have a wee chat about the work that Caris is doing with Screen Queens and more recently Write Her, Direct Her. So Caris, if you're up for a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So very similar to Lauren, really, with Femspectives. When the pandemic happened, we kind of looked to kind of strengthen that community vibe that you get from cinema, even if you go to the cinema by yourself, like I do. It's just nice sometimes to pop on Letterboxd afterwards or on Twitter and see what other people thought of the film. But unfortunately, we're in that situation now where there's no new releases, and if they are, they're low quality material that's on Netflix. So we wanted to kind of see how we were going to do that. Just a bit of background, obviously Rianne Pictures is a production company, but we've kind of branched out in the past few years to kind of offer more online content. So we've always been about supporting women in the industry and kind of building up the presence of women, the kind of age-old argument, but that there's not enough female directors. They're just not being hired. So we do interviews and articles for all of the film festivals happening in the UK and interview the directors, find out what they're doing, who they are. So this year we actually have our first film festival happening, but then the worldwide pandemic decided to come along, which I'm sure wasn't just designed just for us. So we have this great event happening in October, but then we have to think about what is happening and also how to support women and bring them together, not just women, bring people together during this time. We'd already partnered with Screen Queens for our event, and we just always admired how Screen Queens focused on women in film and gave a platform for female writers or women that just wanted to write about film. There's still a lot of stigmatism within criticism in film. A lot of it is still male driven and male dominated. So it's great to see these young voices coming up that are just writing about film and why they love it and focusing on these female characters in these films. So when we partnered with them, we were so excited to kind of have our event. And then we thought, what can we do to kind of inspire people and motivate people and give that community vibe while we're unable to actually see people face to face? And the idea of a quiz kind of come around because I'm sure a lot of you will see that they're absolutely bloody everywhere. Everyone's family's doing them. I think my street is organised a street film quiz. So we wanted to kind of move online and do a quiz, but the first one we did was about women in film. So it was women in film based, which was fun, which was good to do. But then we thought, how are we going to get people to come to our quiz? Because there's so much competition. It's, you know, that 7 p.m. slot on a Friday is prime time right now for online Zoom quizzes. So we kind of just stuck in our communities. We kind of asked the people that kind of read a lot of Screen Queen stuff online, people that kind of read our articles online, and basically just kind of put it out to the masses. We're doing this on Friday. Let us know if you want to come. And the first time we did it, which was last month, it was good. It was fun. We, you know, it's the first time we'd done that. I mean, I use Zoom calls every single day with work, so it just knackers me out sometimes. But it was fun to kind of have that film chat. And each time you asked a question, people would say, "Oh, I actually really love that film. Did you know about this?" And like people were sharing film facts while we were doing the quiz and saying things like, "Oh, I didn't know that," or "Did you actually know that this person was meant to be in that film?" So you had that community vibe going that you don't really get when you're on Twitter or when you're on Facebook or when you're on Reddit or whatever kind of forum you're on, because it's quick and instant. And the quiz was good fun. And then we decided to do a second one, but with the second one, we decided to look at what we were missing out. So we kind of we asked people for feedback, and they gave it and they said it was great, but they wanted it to be longer. Some people wanted it to be shorter. So that was a little bit difficult. But we kind of looked at why people who we thought would have come to the quiz didn't. And we asked them straight away, we said, "Look, we did this quiz. We thought you would have come. Any reason why?" And people said like, "I don't know how to use Zoom. I don't know if the quiz is going to be too hard for me." And it's like to what Lauren said, some people aren't adept with all of this online resources that's happening. So we did a Zoom guide. We just put together a quick kind of how-to. It's just like providing directions if you were doing an event at a cinema somewhere. And it just allowed people that don't usually use Zoom to kind of be like, okay, it's going to be quite simple. And we kind of did a little bit for mockery, like it's not a proper film quiz, you know, it's just a little bit of fun, which was quite interesting because we received a little bit of backlash, which was amusing because I never thought doing a film quiz you'd receive a bit of backlash. But we kind of, to kind of get more people to come or to kind of get more people to see what we were doing, we kind of put into, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm part of a lot of Facebook film groups. They're great for collaborating and things like that. So we got to put our promo in those. And we got a little bit of backlash from someone who said we weren't a proper film quiz because our questions probably weren't hard because our poster was pink. That was a weird one. But yeah, so we took that and we just mocked it and we just turned it on its head and said, you know, this is not a proper film quiz and it's going to be super easy. So everyone should therefore join because you'll all get the answers right. But it's a great way to bring people together, and we doubled the amount of people that joined, and from the first quiz to the second quiz. And I mean, once the quiz is finished, people stayed online for like up to an hour just talking about films, and it was so nice to kind of have that community. Like if you go see a film and then sit in the cafe afterwards and have a discussion, and people just joking around and saying things like, "Oh, did you know about this film?" and things like that. And it's just nice to have that vibe. I mean, I think someone said their partner isn't really into film. I know the feeling. After a film's finished, I want to just talk about everything, and he's just like, "Yeah, it was nice," off to bed kind of thing. So it was good to just bring people together and have that kind of just love of film and talk together about it. And obviously since then we've looked at kind of other ventures. A lot of people have started thinking about webinars and things like that. For me, I think that we're reaching the point of saturation a little bit, where there's a lot of online material out there, but it's not really tailored or catered for certain people. So I think we're going to kind of take a step back from the quizzes for now. Another thing that come up, a few people said they really wanted to take part, but time zones. So we had a few people in Australia really wanting to take part in the quiz. I think it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I did say set an alarm, but they weren't really up for that. So yeah, we're looking into kind of making it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more different levels, easy, medium, hard, whatever you want to call it. But it was great to kind of partner up with a company like Screen Queens and say, look, we're two organisations, and bring those audiences together, help people discover us, help people discover them. And that's what we're continuing to do with our film festival later this year, where we're just partnering up with all these great organisations and just saying, look, we're all here and we're all here together. And I think supporting each other during any time is nice, but certainly at the moment. So it's we're definitely looking forward to hopefully hosting our film festival. But if not, we have a whole roster of ideas for online events. We're just trying to kind of stand out from the crowd a little bit. So probably not another quiz. And just do things that bring people together, that aren't stressful, and just kind of take your mind away. Because I don't know about you guys, but after I got off that 3-hour quiz, I completely forgot there was a pandemic, which is always quite nice to do at the moment, isn't it? But yeah, that's essentially what we've been doing at the moment. We're just recapping what we want to do in the future. We're kind of thinking, having a bit of a 3-month calendar ahead of us with maybe webinars or quizzes or other kind of online community vibes to kind of look at, really. So yeah, it's interesting to hear about what other people are doing. Actually, it's very, very inspiring.
Perfect, thank you so much, Paris. It's so nice to hear as well, like you went through that adaptability phase of working out how these quizzes could work. And I think the feeling that you're echoing of this point of saturation and how do we deal with that in terms of what audience we're talking about and how we think about that is something that I think a lot of people in this meeting are feeling, that we're wanting to do stuff online, but how can we do that in a way that we're speaking to our audiences want to be speaking to, and not just a mass of internet people. So thank you so much. I'm going to invite Snowcat Cinema now, Ben, and Ben's going to chat a wee bit about some of their social media activity, which has been a really nice way to keep them active online and keep in touch with audiences. So I'll throw to Ben just now.
Hi everybody, hope you can hear me. Yeah, so to give you a bit of context, because I think probably outside South Wales, you probably don't know who we are. I started a pop-up cinema in Cardiff about 3 years ago, just doing screenings in the backs of pubs and coffee shops, that kind of thing. But then I've been very lucky for the last 2.5 years to be programming at Penarth Pier. So there's a pavilion on the pier. We're the only cinema on a pier in the UK. We've got a single screen, only 68 seats, and we are programming repertory, independent and cult films. We do a lot of things like Q&As and added value screenings with guests, and some TV screenings we've done as well. So interested to hear from Greg later. So yeah, it's obviously we're in the same situation as everybody else. We've closed down indefinitely. So the thing that I've kind of focused on, so I use we a lot, but Snowcat Cinema is effectively me. My wife helps out with programming. I've got a guy who helps like as a duty manager if I'm not there, but I pretty much do all the programming. I'm the projectionist. I do front of house. I do all the social media, and I have a day job. So I say we, and I've always said we, to make it feel like it's more than just a one-man band, so people don't think, oh, there's just this guy putting films on. But what's really worked, I think, since the pandemic is it's gone back to being very personal. So the very first announcement that I put out to say that the cinema was closing, for the first time it was from me rather than from Snowcat Cinema. So it said my name at the bottom of it. It said, I'm really disappointed about what's happening. I want to try and keep the community together. And it's meant that we've kind of flipped from being a faceless organisation to this guy who lives in Penarth who talks about films all the time. And that's really worked on social media. So the first thing that I did was a couple of watch-alongs. So we watched some Freeview stuff that was on the BBC, The Lady Vanishes and Rio Bravo, the sort of things that we screen anyway. We did a screening of Bacurau on Mubi, and I sat here exactly where I am now and just did an introduction for 5 minutes before the film. We then watched the film as a group, and then I came back for half an hour afterwards and talked about what we'd seen and gave a bit of context about the productions of the films, where they fitted in the context of cinema, that kind of thing. And that then led, because people were looking at me as, oh, it's that guy we see at the cinema all the time, but he's actually the person who organises this. I started to get far more personal messages back and forth on social media about, what do you think of X film, and are you likely to screen this thing later, seeing as you've talked about it and you're interested in it. And then behind me you can see a load of films, and a couple of people on YouTube said, on Twitter, said, we'd be really interested in a tour of your physical media collection. So I wasn't sure how to do that, because there's quite a lot. That's not it. There's another wall over there as well. So there's quite a lot to go through. And so my wife suggested, because she was interested in seeing what was in there as well, that we did a letter a day. So I'm doing at the moment every day on YouTube one letter of the alphabet, where we go through why those films are in my collection, why I've got the expensive limited edition box set of something obscure, that kind of thing. And the thing that's really good with it is we kind of thought nobody would watch it, and we've got a couple of very I don't want to use the word geeky, because I'm one of those people, but people who've got big physical media collections and have got stuff that probably hasn't sold huge numbers of copies in the UK. There's a collection sitting there as well. I can see some in there that I've got. And those people are watching, and those people are commenting a lot. So we're getting really detailed rundowns. I do a letter, and then 2 hours later, someone will go through almost disc by disc that I've just talked about and say, oh, I've got that, and I didn't really like that element of it, and I really like that. You should buy this. So there's a really nice personal interaction going on there. And then we've, the last few of them, I've started to put the video out and then say, oh, what are your favourite ends? Or yesterday we discussed favourite vampire, favourite werewolf, favourite monster, and put the questions back out to the audience, and people are starting to comment along. We're then picking up questions from the comments on YouTube and Facebook, and then referring to those in the next day's video. So people are getting a bit of personal feedback of, oh, I saw a message from Tom, wanted to know who the favourite vampire was. My favourite vampire film is this, just to bring people into it a bit. We've got 12 letters left. So once we've hit the full alphabet, we're going to have to think of something else to do, because I guess the pandemic won't have finished by then. And people seem to be interested in what we're putting out. The other thing I did, so it was really interesting to hear from Caris on that. I did a movie quiz as well, because we always did a quiz every 2 months anyway, in person at the pavilion, and we probably had 65, 70, maybe 80 people each time. And that was a 3-hour quiz with a load of rounds, lots of chances to go to the bar. We had craft rounds and art rounds where people got to join in and design posters and that kind of thing. So obviously it's a bit more difficult to do that kind of thing online. But a couple of weeks ago, we hosted a 3-hour quiz with 110 questions. And I think we probably, at the peak of it, we probably had about 140 people playing. So we didn't get everybody on Zoom for that. I streamed the quiz to YouTube, which was a bit strange to sit there and read a load of questions out without any feedback from the audience or any heckling, which we normally get a lot of heckling, people picking holes in my questions. So it was great not to have that. But you can see Caris nodding. But yeah, so it was really nice. So what we did with that is we encouraged the teams to form up their own Zoom groups or WhatsApp or whatever they wanted to do. So they could be playing 6 people from 6 different houses, but they were all on a WhatsApp group of their own. They then got to mark their own questions and send them in. So it wasn't really for a prize or anything. It was for the pride of seeing who could do the best, I guess. And we will be doing another quiz in a couple of weeks because the feedback from that was amazing. And we had people, I mean, I said where we were, most people probably don't know where Penarth is. It's 2.5 miles outside Cardiff. So Cardiff has a huge number of screens for people to choose from. And we've got one 2.5 miles outside the city. We had quite a lot of feedback from people who were from Cardiff, who played because they had friends who had been to see things with us, who joined them in a team, and who then said, all right, we didn't know that you existed. We've looked on your website. We've seen what sort of films you have on. We'll definitely be coming when you reopen. So it's been really good from a promotional perspective as well, that side of things. And then, as I said, this is me, and I program and do everything. And it's always been a very much curated program. So we do screen the odd new release, but it's only really if I feel it would fit in with our program. So we do get requests from people for things that are coming out, and I kind of have to say it doesn't really fit with what we do. So happy for you to go and watch that at Cineworld in Cardiff. Just we're showing them more obscure stuff. So it's very much curated, and that's carried on as well. So I'm doing a free view recommendation every day across social media. So trying to pick the sort of films that we would put on, and putting a little bit of information about why people perhaps should go and watch them. The difficult thing with that, there's a lot of really good stuff on if you dig around the channels, but I'm kind of having to presume that a lot of people are at work. So if there's an amazing film noir on, but it's on at 4 o'clock in the morning or at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they probably won't be able to tune in and watch it. And I'm expecting people record stuff, but I like the fact that people might all be watching that film at the same time, and then they're commenting on those recommendations. So so the step beyond that then is I'm just about to start a weekly radio program. So somebody in Penarth has set up an online radio presence to go through the pandemic. And I'm going to do a Sunday evening program where I put a recommendation for each day, talk about each film for 3 or 4 minutes, and play a bit of the soundtrack, just so it's like they can listen to it as not like a film review program, because I don't want to give them much away about the films, but it'll be listen to this, you'll hear some nice bits of music, me enthusing about some stuff you might not have heard of, and then hopefully they'll go and watch them, and we'll get some feedback. The other thing that was really interesting, sorry, this is my last point, I'm waffling. The really interesting thing from Anna in Berlin was the thing about streaming onto walls or screening on walls. So I'm really worried that even when the lockdown gets reduced, the pressure on the lockdown gets reduced, I think from what I've been hearing from exhibitors around the world, it's likely that we'll still have social distancing measures in place. And if you've only got 68 seats in a very small theatre, if I can only sell 25 of those seats or 30 of those seats, I still can't open because I'm not going to make any money. So I've been looking with our local council at some areas that we were intending to do outdoor screenings this summer anyway. So one of those being the actual physical end of Penarth Pier. So you'd be right out in the sea, it'd be amazing. But we have got a couple of places, I hadn't thought about walls, but we've got a couple of places actually on the back of council buildings with lots of flats overlooking them. So I'm going to go and have a chat with the council tomorrow to see if we could do that kind of thing. Because I think from the perspective of social distancing, I could just pull up in my car in the car park at the back of the building and project off a table. I don't even have to have anyone else there. And if we were doing silence, it would be nice and easy. So that's really exciting. I'm going to go and have a look at that. But yeah, it's I guess it's challenging for everyone, but I've just tried to make it personal, and people seem to be responding well to that. So if anyone's got any questions, ask away, but I don't know what else I can say.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really liked your daily freebie recommendations, and then I thought the physical media part of it was just something that I think we probably all have physical media in our house, and as exhibitors, that's just drawing out the curatorial into online. So thanks so much.
No problem.
I'm now going to throw to Cassie from Backseat Bingo, if Cassie's about.
I'm trying to find Cassie. There she is.
There she is. Let's unmute. No, we've remuted her.
Oh no.
Hello. No, she's still muted.
I think she may have to unmute herself. Yeah, there you go. Hi, Cassie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm Cassie. I'm from Backseat Bingo. It's just me as well. We're a really, really small film club based in Glasgow. I screened films a couple of years ago, and then last year I partnered up with the fantastic Matchbox, and we did a screening, and that kind of reignited my passion for losing money and screening films. So that's what we've been doing. With the pandemic, there was a couple of screenings that we've missed out on, and potentially the Scalarama in September as well. 3 or 4 screenings that I had organised at the CCA in Glasgow, but I'm trying to use this time to just trying to figure out what direction I'm going to go in, because with Backseat Bingo, the main focus is screening cult films with an emphasis on costume design and fashion. I am like a fashion historian, so where possible I give a illustrated talk before the film on the fashion elements of it, and that's something that I'm really, really passionate about, and I do in my spare time and at work and things like that as well. So that's my kind of angle. It's been quite sad not being able to do that, because that's the element that I really, really enjoy, and connecting with people about different aspects of film, because a lot of the time costume design gets missed out. So that was my kind of idea behind doing the whole kind of film and fashion. I did an online, a kind of watch along of Purple Rain this week. So I'm a massive Prince fan, and I actually research about Prince and fashion, and I'm like a major Purple nerd basically, and I wanted to do something to commemorate Prince's passing. He passed away on the 21st of April, so I was like, well, with the pandemic, we'll do a wee tweet along, a wee watch along. Now, I am absolutely awful at anything technology based, as you can see when I can unmute myself. So it was a choice. We used Zoom. So first of all, we asked our followers on Twitter what they wanted to view out of Prince's sterling film repertoire. We'd already screened Under the Cherry Moon last year, which was a massive success, so we couldn't screen that again, and the majority was for Purple Rain. So we introduced the film on Zoom. So I basically shared a talk that I do about the costume design from the kids, and a lot of that talk was based on an interview that I had with the costume designer. So that part went well, but prior to that, we also got Zoom bombed. So that was do you know what? It actually really floored me, because, like I say, we're a really, really small, kind of film organisation. There was maybe like 10 or 11 people on the call, and we're not doing it for numbers or anything like that. But 2 of those people were, sending pictures of horse genitals and things like that. So it just totally flung me off my game. But we got through it. I did my talk, and I got some really nice feedback from it. And then we did a tweet along to Purple Rain. To be honest, the tweet along didn't really go that well. Just being honest, nobody really kind of engaged in it apart from myself and my boyfriend, and we're sitting next to each other tweeting along at the same time, like having seen the film 400 times. But it's one of those things. You do it because you love it, so it's but it would be nice to get more engagement. And the last Scalarama meeting we were on, I was talking about how I want to build up a bit more of a kind of audience, because I'm new to although I screened films a couple of years ago, I studied fashion at university, so I write for Screen Queens, and I do a lot of my research and a lot of my work is based on films, but I'm totally out of the film realm, and I'm finding it quite difficult to build a kind of following, because I want to engage more with people online and perhaps use online a bit better. So after the Purple Rain, I was a bit deflated, mainly because of the Zoom bombing, but these things happen, it's fine. Like listening to Femspectives, like you guys have got it down to a T. It makes it a lot easier, like that you've got that best practice that other people can, smaller organisations and things like that can follow, and hopefully, I don't know if I'm going to do another tweet along. I might do. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to do maybe a monthly, depending on how long these things go on for, a monthly kind of Zoom seminar-y talk type thing about the costume design in a film. So I'm researching Vera West just now, who was the main costume designer for the Universal Studio films, and she's largely unknown. She wasn't credited in the majority of the films. So that's something that I really want to shine a light on. And again, those films are easily accessible for people. The majority of people will have a Universal Monster films in their DVD collection or their VHS collection. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do. I think like what we're all saying is, I mean, I know myself, I'm completely overwhelmed with the amount of content that's online just now, and even social media. You know, it's overwhelming for me just to even think of it. Do you know what I mean? There's just so much, what like everyone's been speaking. There's so many watch-alongs, there's so many screenings, there's so many quizzes, and they're all amazing. But I mean, I struggle to have the brain capacity myself to do these things that I want to do. Does that make sense? Along with your day job and your life shit and all that. So yeah, that's where I am, just being honest. I think I would like to do another kind of Zoom fashion film seminar thing, and then people by all means can watch the film afterwards, but hopefully without horse genitals, but we will see. Yeah, that's me. Anyone have any questions on how not to do a Zoom chat? You can DM me.
Honest and open about like your experience. That's obviously not a positive, but I think as well we're all going through like such drastic changes day by day in terms of how our practices online have to change. That there will be things that aren't positive and that we're learning through it. So thank you for sharing your horse genital story. I'm sorry that it had that. I don't think Prince would have wanted that, but I'm sure that he would have been pleased that you were celebrating him.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for sharing all of that with us. Normally, in the real world, if Scalarama was happening, we would be using these sessions to help guide new exhibitors into exhibition. We're obviously in a really weird space and time with that, and we're really pleased that this can now become a bit of a rallying space for smaller and established exhibitors to come together. So in saying that, this session would normally be about the basics of how to license a film, the nuts and bolts, what you can get from Film Bank and what they will argue with Park Circus about what they own the rights to. But having a look at who's in the room, I think that we're going to just share our previous resources that we've made for Scalarama in terms of licenses, if that is something that you want to brush up on. It's really basic but pretty comprehensive guide that covers all of the license Polish chat on why you should have licenses to where you can get them, and also covers a bit about specifically Glasgow based venue licenses and things that you would need. But seeing as I think the majority of people here know about Film Bank and hopefully are using it to its fullest, I'm going to invite or say hello to Greg first. Greg is from Pilot Light. In fact, Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Greg. I'm the festival director of Pilot Light TV Festival, up in Manchester. So we screen all types of TV, old stuff, new stuff, we screen web series as well. And I also work across rad screenings, which is essentially the sort of Manchester version of Matchbox. And I also work on Manchester Animation Festival as well.
Perfect. And because you work because you established Pilot Light, you also have insight into, I think, some licensing issues that are something that would interest us, but certainly everyone in this room. And Greg has very helpfully pre-recorded a video so that we can offer this section as a captioned resource moving forward. So thanks to the power of Zoom, we're now going to throw to a pre-recorded Greg to give a bit of insight into yeah, TV licensing and things like that.
And just to get ahead of this, if this screws up in terms, it's a YouTube clip and it will be available afterwards. We're also going to share the link in the chat in case the Zoom connectivity fails us. But let's hope this works out.
Hi guys, so my name is Greg Walker. I am the Festival Director of Pilot Light TV Festival. I started rad screenings in Manchester, and I also work across Manchester Animation Festival and the film side of Bradford Literature Festival as well. I hope you're all doing alright with everything that's going on. But yeah, so I'm here to just talk about some licensing stories from my journeys in film and TV exhibition. So I know that the Matchbox guys and the Scalarama Glasgow guys are going to talk through more of the kind of baseline stuff, which everyone should know when going into screenings. So I'm just going to talk about some of the advice I've got for anything a bit more out of the ordinary, or anything that is a bit more abstract, potentially. So firstly, the place I always start if things aren't on Film Bank or anything like that is look who's got the DVD rights in the UK. That's a very good place to start. And generally, they should know who's got the rights and they should lead you to that person. And then if not, that's when you kind of need to shift into research mode. And you can Google these sort of things. There are resources like, IMDb Pro, if you can lend access to that from anyone. And Senando, similarly, if you can borrow access to that for anyone. And yeah, so if you research through them, you can generally find contacts for stuff. But then, following on from that, which is honestly probably the most helpful advice that I give to people, is just reach out to people on social media. Just put a call out on Twitter or ask anybody involved with Scalarama. And if people don't know, they will help you share the message and just get it out there, really. And my sort of final port of call when it comes to rights, which again, this is very, very helpful, just as helpful as the social media tip, is research who else has screened it. Generally, everyone who works in film exhibition is very lovely and always happy to help because they've gone through these similar searches for film rights. And people will hook you up with contacts or guide you in the right direction if possible. Just recently, I was trying to clear the Japanese version of Wuthering Heights to include in the BFI's Japan season. And that was one of the biggest licensing journeys I've been on in a while. I contacted the Independent Cinema Office, the BFI, and no one had a clue. I talked to exhibitors around the country, and even when I told them who looked like they were the rights holders, they were like, I'm not sure you're going to get in anywhere there. So then I shifted into, social media didn't help. That one didn't come to fruition. But then I emailed the only person who screened it outside of Japan, it seemed, in recent times. And that was Cinema in New York. They screened it on 35mm about 4 years ago. And they got back to me straight away. They gave me the contact of the film's original director, which was great, to sort of licensing directly with him. And they'd also give me the contact of an Italian gallery, which has what seems to be the only 35mm print outside of Japan as well. So yeah, you will go on these journeys, but these things always end up getting resolved most of the time. A couple of random bits on film before I jump into the complicated world of TV rights. Always check the materials before you go ahead and do a screening, because a lot of people sort of struggle. They'll clear it and then realize they have nothing to screen from. When I programmed a David Cronenberg season as part of when I worked at Grimfest, and I bought the DVD. We cleared it all through Film Bank and everything, and then a few days before the screening, I got a phone call from David Cronenberg's team, And they were like, no, you have to screen from this specific DVD, which was like a rare one, which I had to fork out 90 quid for, plus all the shipping costs and everything. So yeah, just be wary of that, because otherwise, you might not have something to screen from, or you might end up forking out, like I have done many times for German and Italian Blu-rays of multiple films which you thought would be available. And also, a quick one, if you are dealing with any sales agents, don't be disheartened by how much money they want. A lot of them exist to, obviously make film sustainable for filmmakers, and ensure, they're remunerated for their work. So just bear that in mind. It's quite hard sometimes bringing them down on their thousands of pounds asks for feature films, or I've even had hundreds for shorts as part of, a shorts program, which has had 20 films. Sometimes you can explain, it's not sustainable, and I'm like, okay, but then other times we're like, we've got to make money, you just have to let that one be. So yeah, let's jump into TV rights. I'll try and jump through some examples for you. So yeah, I run Pilot Light TV Festival, so we screen new TV, old TV, all sorts of stuff. So here's a few examples, because it's never the same. Because basically, when a film is made, the theatrical rights and the home entertainment rights and like the airline rights, the hospital rights and all that lot are sold. But when it comes to TV, what I found from when I started this journey sort of 5 or 6 years ago, there is the broadcast rights, there is the home entertainment rights, and there's nothing really outside of that contractually. So when it comes to film screenings with paid admission, it's a bit of a grey area. So there's some people who are just like, no, we won't do it because it's too complicated for us to figure it out. And there's some who are like, all right, well, we'll try and figure this out. So I'm just going to run through a few examples for you, just so if you are thinking of screening a show, you might be able to look at some of these examples and see routes that you could go down for clearing something. So Snuffbox by Matt Berry and Rich Fulcher was one of the big highlights of the first year of Pilot Light. This was really easy to clear. We rang the production company, one phone call, zero paperwork. They were just like, yes, this is fine. And the only cost was the return postage of the digibeta tapes. Perfect. In the second year, this is still in the first year, we screened Nathan Barley by Chris Morris and Charlie Brooker. This was one of the ones where we went to Channel 4 to clear it, and they were like, ooh, well, we're not really sure how to clear this. So they said, right, if you clear all the stills and music for theatrical exhibition, and then we'll, sort out the rights after that. So we went about doing that, and basically the stills company wanted £50 per image for the clearances, and there was like a lot of images. So I explained the context to them, and the person I was talking to was like, I'm not sure I can do this. And I was like, well, can I talk to, somebody higher up? And then the guy higher up rang me, and he was like, I love Nathan Barley, mate, just go for it. So you do have them strokes of luck. So when it came to the fee, basically, we use film bank terms and sort of double them when we're doing something like a 6-episode run, because it's an equivalent kind of thing. That's what we propose to people who are unsure. So we did that on a £250 MG versus 35% of the box office. And Channel 4 were happy with that. And then that became a contract, which was a template for future stuff. So still on Channel 4, we then did Brass Eye, which was the same but quite different. So there was all the same sort of clearances, but a lot of the clearances were in the BBC archive because it was a lot of archive footage. And the BBC archive is licensed by Getty, who are obviously like multinational conglomerate, don't really care about cultural context. They originally wanted $7,000 for these image clearances. We got them down to 1,000, but that had to be paid on the day. The only reason we paid that is because we knew we had a USP of showing unaired material. So we knew we would make that money back, but if we hadn't had that, we likely would have scrapped the screening. So yeah, just be wary of stuff that has a lot of archive footage in it, like Armando Iannucci's Time Trumpet. We tried to screen that, which is a very similar sort of, setup to Brass Eye. And the BBC just outright said no, because they knew how expensive it would be to properly clear it. What we got next? Mad Men. This is one where the rights holder was actually a film distributor. It's Lionsgate, but it is by far like the most prestigious, if not the only prestigious list they have on their theatrical exhibition list for TV. So they know its value. So we had to pay £500 for one episode. Again, we knew we'd make the money back because it would be a highlight festival event. But if it was outside of the festival, obviously maybe not as sustainable. Right, so let's stop talking about stuff that's too expensive and talk about some more, cheaper, fun stories. So we screened Utopia by Dennis Kelly a few years ago. We screened the first episode, and we had Dennis Kelly and the producer and some of the cast down. It was really great. But because of how the royalties work with the contracts within that production company, they have to charge something for licensing it out. But they saw the cultural context and everything, so we paid £1 for the license for Utopia. And then on Sugar Rush, which is another Channel 4 one, but Channel 4 were like, well, we've got the broadcast rights, but Sony have the home entertainment rights. So we had to talk with both of them, and it was a matter of, linking them both in an email and going, right, guys, if both of you are happy with us screening, are you happy for us to proceed? Because both of them were like, yeah, we're happy for you to go, but I don't know what the other person thinks. So yeah, we got that one again for free. All we had to pay for was the materials, which we just got off Amazon. And then finally, Skins, which was an interesting one. We had the creators attending, so clearance was fairly easy and fairly fast, but it was on the proviso that we had to clear packed equity clearances for all of the season 1 principal cast. We were obviously all mega stars now, so we were emailing all these massive agents. Luckily, we managed to get it all sorted, and it was a really great event. But yeah, it was just one of them crazy situations where we're like emailing Dev Patel's agent just saying, please, can we do this screening? Because if there was any major profit made, they would have to have a cut of it, but we had to explain, like, your cut of the profit of this screening would be like 0.005p, so, come on. And this leads me on to US TV. It's a question I always get, and it's the hardest thing to clear, to be honest. We're very lucky that we, well, I don't say lucky, but we've built a lot of partnerships which made it possible. So then partnerships kind of lead me on to the loophole which allows you to screen American TV, and that is promotional screenings. So with American TV, if any profit is made post-broadcast, then it needs to be allocated to royalties to all the different people who worked on it. And that's all well and good being contracted when it's like, selling to different territories and merchandise and home entertainment and all that sort of stuff. But when it's a little screening in Manchester, a lot of people will just dismiss it because it's not worth the paperwork. Or they say, yeah, if you clear it with the Writers Guild, the Producers Guild, the Actors Guild, all that sort of stuff, then we can talk about maybe doing it. But promotional screenings don't come under that because it's part of marketing. So we've managed to do stuff like Game of Thrones and Westworld and American Gods, and lots of other big TV shows through that kind of way of going about it. And because of that whole royalties thing, if you can prove that you're not making a profit, it makes it easier to screen as well, which we aim with Pilot Light to not do stuff that gets a profit, mainly so we can actually do these sort of clearances. And it kind of helps, if we have these big name TV shows, it helps us with funding applications in future years. And if you can build them relationships with promotional screenings, it can help with these sort of inquiries about not-for-profit screenings as well. And that brings me on to cult rep TV very quickly. Just because I know it's something that's very Scalarama, so I just want to make people aware of stuff. So here's 2 examples of very similar shows, but with very different licenses. So we screened Erie, Indiana a couple of years ago. It was a very culty early 90s TV show. And it was one where we were sorting it out with Lionsgate, who we'd done Mad Men with. But then right at the last minute, just before contracts, they were like, we don't have the rights. Sorry. So then they told us who it was, and it was a company called Hearst, who, when it comes to kind of film stuff, they're just a bulk rights holder. They're not kind of in the business of creativity or anything like that. And the Nowhere Indiana was a cult show. So they wanted, like, we said, oh, this is what we think, you know, rights-wise, because they didn't know. And then they're like, oh, no, we were thinking like £1,000 for 6 episodes. And we were like, oh, my God. But it hadn't been screened in the UK or anything like that. So, like, right, we'll bite the bullet and go for it. I mean, we lost money on that one, but it was a great event. And then on the sort of flip side of it, Round the Twist, another very similar early 90s sort of, you know, kids leaning TV show, just culty. That one, we tried to clear it through the BFI, and then they were just like, yeah, it's Australian, so we're not really sure about this. And I just cleared this with the, I think it's called the Australian Children's TV Foundation, off the top of my head. And we, you know, told them about the cultural context, and they were like, yeah, this sounds really cool, just go for it. And then were like, you know, let us know how it went and everything. So they were really cool and supportive. But, you know, it's two very, very similar shows and very similar audiences with completely different terms. And then finally is British TV. So a lot of British TV can be cleared via the BFI's PAA agreement. You know, we've screened stuff like, you know, Alan Partridge, Ghostwatch, and Big Train, and we've like cleared stuff like Spaced through them and things like that. And it's a fairly easy way to go about it. I'm just going to bring them up on screen now, so you can have a look at these rules and, you know, come back and pause this at another point. All of this is on the BFI website. So you generally just have to stick to these rules, and to be honest, it is fairly easy to stick with them if you're running a festival or a venue. But yeah, the full thing's online, so check that out, and that's a lot of help. And yeah, that's all I've got to say on licenses for now. If you want to ask me or DM me on Twitter about anything, my Twitter handle is just below. Yeah, so that's all my things to say on licenses for now. And just to recap, yeah, one of the biggest advice I'll give is just ask people in British film exhibition and, you know, film exhibition around the world just about their experiences, because people will share their knowledge. Everyone's really nice in this industry. And yeah, just ask about Twitter or just DM people, and people more often than not will help. Yeah, so nice to talk to you guys, and good luck with planning your screening. Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, past Greg. We're now going to present Greg. Present Greg, future Greg's not yet here.
We're in a time travel conundrum now, like.
Time doesn't mean anything anymore. So I just wanted to pick up, thank you so much for pre-recording that video and your insights on TV licensing. I think it's something even personally that I didn't have much insight to, so I find that really beneficial. But I just wanted to pick up on a few things that you touched on, and particularly in terms of this idea of collaboration or reaching out to people to work out where a license comes from or trace that thread back. So I just wondered, how would you approach an organisation if you wanted to find out where they got the licenses from? Would you offer a co-present, a collaboration, or just go straight in and say, where'd you get this?
Well, it depends on where they are, obviously. If somebody's internationally based, it makes it a bit harder, that collaboration. But say if I was reaching out to somebody like you guys, then I would definitely look at something more along them lines. But yeah, I typically just jump straight in. I gave them sort of an overview of our organisation and the event that we're doing. And then usually, yeah, people just come straight back to us.
Yeah, I mean, we personally as well have had really great responses in terms of like trying to hunt down, most recently, rights for actually the Japan season, which I think had the whole of like the British film exhibition industry like try to work out how to speak Japanese at one point. Like reaching out to like American university libraries and everything, but that's probably more on the side of it getting a bit more complex. I wanted to come back to, you spoke about people wanting a ridiculous amount of money sometimes. How is it that you approach negotiating, and do you have any tips or insight into how you would talk them down from millions?
Well, there's different ways I approach it, really. The one that seems to do best is just sort of laying it out for them and just plain maths. It's just basically being like, this is how many seats we've got, this is how much we're selling tickets for, and this is how much we'll be in debt if we pay you the fee you want. And usually people tend to realize and like, yeah, okay then. But in terms of it being a festival, sometimes obviously that complicates the waters a bit, because you could be charging £6, but you could have like a budget of like £250,000 if you're a big festival. But yeah, they generally do realize when you spell it out for them, because we're never usually trying to just get something cheap when we could afford it. It's always just a matter of trying to work with them so we can work sustainably, but they can also still pay their filmmakers and pay their bills.
Yeah, and I think as well we've had, again, just from a Matchbox point of view, had really good responses when negotiating things, when we just say, like, we're really, when we're talking to any distributors or anything, we're like, look, we're a really small organisation, and like, these are like the, actualities of us. And then obviously on the flip side of that, when we're like, if you're trying to get like agreements for promotional screenings, we're like, oh, we're massive. We're the biggest thing in Scotland.
Of course.
Never done. I would never like overstate what we do. We don't. That's that.
No, but I definitely link Kianacon and like GQ now.
You can let people.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And I think that shows like offering context into what you're doing, of course, in a festival setting as well. In terms of smaller exhibitors, when you're trying to get that licensing, I think Stephen from Red Thread mentioned in the chat that they had quite a difficult time licensing or finding agreeable terms for licensing their remake film festival, and I think we found that as well. I don't know what your experiences is, but definitely I would say European film rights or film buyers are always...
Oh yeah, French sales agents are the absolute worst for it. They're like, some of the costs are just like insane. By the way, I used to work in Grimfest, like some of the sort of titles which hadn't been picked up for distribution yet, which we were trying to get from sales agents, they were just absolutely insane. It was the same sort of saga dance every single year. It's like, it's the same festival, same audience. We can't pay £5,000 for one film.
Yeah, I think we, like, experiences that I've had, French film, they just don't care. Like, you can say it's for free, so you can say it's for community, but then that comes into how you then develop those relationships, and over time, I think that becomes easier.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have any experience as of yet for licensing online, if you've looked into that, if that's something that you guys are exploring down there.
Not with Pilot Light yet, because we're just sort of still negotiating our kind of postponement on the festival. But some other festivals, we are starting to look at it and like opening submissions for things. And then, yeah, it's just the start of the conversations really. But I mean, I'm hoping that people should be fairly flexible with it, because at the end of the day, if these sales agents and distributors aren't flexible, they're just going to tank as much as we are. So it's in everyone's interest to work together really.
Yeah, definitely. We've been hearing a bit from Park Circus over the last couple of weeks and what they're working on. So I think they're working towards some classic rep titles for when cinemas reopen. Obviously, as tiny exhibitors that aren't venues, that there's still something I think there that we have to work out how we approach distributors and how we work through the new landscape. And I think in the next session we're going to look at some of the models that other people are using, whether distributors or exhibitors, that are maybe getting around the new plane or you know, shaping how we now relate to film licenses. And anecdotally, I think it's really interesting that we're now all turning to Netflix and Freeview.
Everyone's turning to the enemy that's everyone's been discussing for a while.
Everyone's terrified of Netflix because they're stealing audiences, and now it's the only thing that they can get audiences on, or promoting just like very illegal streams, you know.
Absolutely.
No, it's not. Does anyone have any questions directly relating to licenses in terms of looking forward to when we're back in the physical realm, or anything that we maybe could pick up on for new landscape?
Do you want to throw open to
Will I unmute everyone and let us just rabble?
Well, let's not rabble. More than normal.
Always spoil the fun.
So, yeah, everyone should be able to speak. You know, funds free. Is that what you say? You're a weird army freak. Has anyone got a question? Gary has a question.
No, it's just to inform, we joined that Movieola thing, which is like a charity down in like South England somewhere, that they have done that kind of like, they're like the community cheap licenses thing, and they're cheaper than Film Bank, but they only produce like a film list every 3 months, and you have to select it from them. But it was like £40 cheaper than Film Bank, and they've got some really new titles. Kind of, it's all like your film, big cinema releases and all that. But it was a really interesting model that they've used to get, and they do community cinemas down in Devon and Kent, down in England and all that. So you should check them out if you want to show these big film releases and when we get back to normal times. I thought it was a good model that they were doing, and cheaper for everybody. I'll send you the name.
Yeah, definitely be interested to look into that model. I think as well, seeing like Park Circus are developing a strategy. I think that Film Bank maybe we'll see some movement on that as well. I don't know.
I don't think we will. I think everyone's keeping their powder dry because they don't know how things are going to map out, and I think that's also stopping them from doing anything particularly radical. And so in terms of Film Bank and Park Circus, I'm not sure what we'll see, but in terms of all the other independent distributors, whether it's Arrow or people that are even more niche than Arrow, I think there's an opportunity to negotiate, and like there's new models that they're that people are demonstrating how the model for online screening for independent exhibitors would work, whether it's going straight into distribution via there's a documentary about a record shop that's kind of doing the rounds, and basically they can give platforms to within the Vimeo OTT model. They can give you a platform for your either your venue or as you as an exhibitor sell tickets or rentals that way. And so I think that's one of the models that probably will work, but I don't know how that's going to, unless Film Bank develop their own model.
I was talking about, I meant like a landing strategy for when we come back into cinemas. I think that we're going to see the traditional avenues that you can see listed in our previous guide for when things were real, look towards what in real life means for them. But I think you're right in saying that we've seen smaller distributors already starting to like move towards online models where they're hosting their own things on platforms, and that's something I think we're going to see more of. But if no one's got any questions directly relating to film licenses, I realise we're also aware is that our model for these Scalarama events usually is that ladder process, and at the moment we're like speaking to people that we know that have been doing it for a year, so it's a slightly different context, and also now licenses are like a Netflix account that's very different fare. So let's float.
You got a question for Greg? Do you have any more questions for Greg? No? Oh, I had a question for Greg.
Oh, sorry.
Were you wrapping things up?
No, I was going to move on to the everybody.
Well, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? To an extent. Yeah. I was just going to ask Greg, what you would do if you couldn't find a license for something.
What would you generally do? If I went through absolutely everything that I tried, it depends on the situation. If it's something like Sophie Brown's legendary Point Break escapades, like talking to her and all that sort of stuff, we eventually just went for it because we were like, well, if nobody cares, then fuck it. But it's kind of that case by case thing, and it's keeping that box office aside for God knows how long, just in case. But we generally just don't really risk that because you never know. You might not get in touch with anybody, but then the person who finds out might be an absolute bastard, so you don't really want to risk it.
Yeah, we've seen some recommendations of like when you should self-indemnify, and they're just some of the anecdotal stuff is just wild. Like, if BBFC don't have it listed, it's fine, fire on.
Well,
It's evidently not true, and self-indemnifying is probably like the nth degree. If we've ever self-indemnified, it's been on a case-by-case basis. We wouldn't I don't even know if we would self-indemnify for something.
Yeah, I mean, no. I mean, I think it's very rare that like you're saying, Sophie Brown chasing down Point Break. It's really rare that you can't eventually figure out who has the license for something, and then then you're not self-indemnifying. You're just screwing that way. So I think it's extremely rare that you would self-indemnify. For anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's just you can demonstrate that you've steps to find it. You just haven't found it. Like Craig was saying, keep the box off to the side so that if somebody wants it, they can grab it.
There's definitely a difference between self-indemnifying and then just like screening like the born identity.
Stop confusing me by being nice and giving me phones. Fine. Why do you have to trip me?
Happening.
Maybe it's not a horse's penis.
Yeah, lucky.
No, what I was going to say is that if we're all unmuted and chatting anyway, that if anyone has any questions that are more general relating to any of the points that we've been discussing today, or anything that you'd like to bring up anyway, please feel free to use this time wisely.
Find me a wall in Glasgow and I'll do that. No problems, by the way. I just need to find the wall.
That was so fucking loud.
Aggressive and like, you're not.
I thought you were doing some kind of Zoom bomb trick, and
so Gary, we are looking for walls as well because we had this idea with Radical Home Cinema. So maybe we can chat more about it. Because if you have the equipment, we may find some people who were already showing films at their house. So I don't think they will have any issue of projecting from their window.
Sweet man, find me the wall.
Fantastic.
Maybe we could start sourcing walls, like as a wall sourcing. Stephen.
Yeah, that's the purpose. I feel like it was Stephen that was. Well, apologies, Stephen, if it wasn't you, but it looked like you that was like shouting. Aye. Yeah. Anything else? Is anyone else up to anything like in the next wee while or before the next meeting that they want to talk about? Amanda's there. Like, are you? Hi, Amanda Rogers. If you can hear.
Hi, I'm there. Yeah.
Are you up to anything in Edinburgh, or like, you know, obviously online based in Edinburgh?
No, other than we're trying to do our podcast more regularly, trying to do it live, and you know, the nice thing about having more, you know, we can ask people from around the world, and we're getting the gumption to do so. So doing that a bit, and then, but yeah, in terms of online screenings, I feel the same as everybody else, where I there's so many options, and I'm really, it's been fun to explore and go to them, but I'm a bit not thinking about doing it myself at this stage, you know, but maybe I will in the future.
It is.
Yeah. I think as well, I should have mentioned this when I mentioned the Ben Roberts thing, but if you are feeling that your life is lacking in Zoom meetings, which I think we're all feeling, tomorrow at 12, Film Hub Scotland are running a session on marketing over Zoom. They did a session. If you're a member of Film Hub Scotland, sign up to the Zooms. If you're not a member of Film Hub Scotland and you are in Scotland, please think about applying. It's free. There's all these great members, you know, you can apply for funding, you can get support. But currently they're running these weekly Zoom sessions. Last week was really nice, just a coffee morning style type thing to chat with all of the familiar faces that we're missing. But tomorrow, myself, Amanda, and some of the Glasgow Film Theatre marketing team are going to be presenting on social media and how you can court people online with your charming content. So if anyone's interested in that, we can share the sign up link, or we can point you in the right direction towards Charlotte, and Film Hub is organising that, and that might be helpful if anyone wants to look at how you can develop social media in a time where it's all we have, really. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to pick up.
I just wanted to we'll reiterate about the Kayla Janice in conversation, which will be on the 10th of May, Sunday the 10th of May, a bit later on, 6 till 8 p.m. Because Kayla's in darkest Canada, and so to have to get up there early on a Sunday morning. But as I say, hopefully some of you are aware of Kayla's work, but if not, we'll be doing our best to share, who she is and why that's going to be a really good conversation, really fun. But of course, it'll be recorded just like these ones are, and archived, so you can see it after the fact as well. And particularly, if anyone has questions, the way we'll run it is it'll be kind of an conversation with myself and Kayla. But we'll have, if anyone has questions they'd like to ask, they can sit on the Zoom call and then talk to and then bring them directly to Kayla at the end or in the middle, depending. But for the most part, we'll be streaming it to Facebook, and so it'll be for watching as well. But if you have questions or you'd like to ask a question to Kayla, just give us a shout. We'll be doing a call out as well, and you can take part in the Zoom. So as a kind of bonus one before the next full Scalarama roundtable chat.
Yeah, and just to touch on what the future looks like for these sessions, it would be great. Actually, have you got the survey link?
Yeah.
I'll share the survey link that actually Lauren was talking about earlier. You've already filled it out. It seems that you can't do it again. But if you haven't, please fill it out and tell Film Hub Scotland this was at least on some practice useful. Looking forward to the session next month on the 24th of May after the special bonus one. We're going to be looking at specific online strategies that people are using, and we're going to be inviting some I've been describing them as like big boys, but I don't know what you would, like distributors, people that are doing stuff, that have the money to do stuff, that are doing things that are interesting and that would hopefully be able to feed.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have people that are just like all of us, or I know that like everyone's involved in Scalarama, and even in this call is doing very different things in different contexts, but independent exhibitors that are screening online, distributors who are providing a model to work with independent exhibitors, so that it's less one-off things. Even though there's loads of awesome stuff going on, there's a model there, or a variety of models that will allow sustainable activity, and that means that like it means that going forward, to coin a phrase, like there's a way to like have this activity and hopefully in parallel with in real life stuff, so that like it's the best of both worlds. Because I think if anything, this is probably going to show us that the world is going to change, and it's not going to be the same on the other side, but there are positive aspects to that that we can hopefully embrace. So that's what the next one will be about.
Yeah, and we'll also be joined by Marcel from York Kino Group to talk a wee bit about what they're doing. They've got a bunch of kinos across Berlin, so they're having to be quite proactive in their approach. And then looking forward, we've got stuff that will cover accessibility and inclusion, press and marketing, and practical event delivery, hopefully for times where we're back in real life. But we would really like to hear from you guys if there's anything that you would specifically want covered, focused on, particularly in the new landscape. These were all things that were brought over from last year when it was obviously a wee bit of a different function that these had. So we would like to hear what would be beneficial to use.
Or if there's people you would like to speak to, exhibitors or things you have spotted happening online internationally, and you would like to bring them to the chat like we've done today a wee bit, just give us a shout either by email or in the Facebook group or on Facebook or anywhere. Just give us a shout and we'll see if we can sort it out.
And same as last session, this has been recorded. We will be transcribing it, doing a blog and some resources off the back of it, so that it's there for anyone that wants to refer to it or for future use.
Greg's video is already online.
Greg video's online.
Oh yeah, I want to apologise for some of the formatting and the subtitles. That was my fault. It works on Vimeo, but I forgot it doesn't work on YouTube, and we switched to YouTube, so I'll fix that. the earliest opportunity. Sorry, Greg.
Aye.
Unless anyone else has anything else to say, we can release you.
Wild.
Yeah. Well, I'd just like to thank you all for attending. It's always really nice to have people in these chats, people that we recognise, brand new faces. Special thanks to Greg, of course, for his insights into licensing, and Ben and Cassie and Lauren and Karis and Anna for giving insights into their specific projects. Like I said, I'll share on the events page just now for that Zoom tomorrow if marketing is your bag. Otherwise, we'll be in touch. We'll stay in touch as we always do with all of you. Look forward to attending all of your online stuff if you're online, and if not, just keeping up. And we'll see you all soon, hopefully, either in Zoom or IRL.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
See you guys.
Guys.
We just keep waving.
We just wave the entire time.
A freeze frame.